Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, and locked? Here we go. You're dial set correctly to USA Prepares. And we broadcast 2 hours, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Central Time. So if you'd like to call us, the best time to call is when we're on the air. And the number is 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. And if you'd like to listen on your telephone, 605-477-3249, 605-477-3249. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. Welcome, Rick.
Good morning, Vincent.
Hey, Rick, when you think about it, back in the 1960s, the 1950s, we started listening to more and more radio. Who would have ever thought that we'd be able to listen to the radio on our telephone? Who would have ever thought that? And that broadcast would be continuously streamed, 24 hours a day until the next broadcast, and then they'd be replaced with the newest one over and over and over. So you can listen on demand on your telephone. Who would have thought that? Very interesting. And, I thought that, geez, why would somebody be doing that? Well, they do. They do. And I think it's quite fascinating. Rick, I want to tell you a story, if I may, in class. And it's about work ethic. So we know this person who happens to be a consultant. And this person is a consultant with a group of other consultants. So let's say there's like 10 of them. And I'm making that number up, but that's probably pretty close. So there are 10 of these consultants, and they go out to the client's work site, and they do what consultants do. Now, they have a dress code, and they have a demeanor that they must maintain to be professional. After all, they're being paid by the company they're consulting for. Okay. So there's this person who is part of this team, and they fly around the country. So they'll come from various locations, and they'll go to the destination, to the work site, and they will conduct their consulting operations. Well, one of these relatively new consultants is a young person. We'll call him a millennial. And he shows up and they have a dress code, okay? Professional dress code, which would be, for women, it would be a woman's suit. For the guys, it would be a suit, men's suit. Guy shows up, a millennial, in sandals and shorts and a T-shirt. What do you do with someone like that? What do you do when, the guy just doesn't show up in the proper attire for the organization? He doesn't want to represent the organization well. Well, to me, it's an outrage. It's an absolute outrage. And back in 1993, I had a class, and I was teaching young people to be professional. I was teaching entrepreneurship, how to start your own business. But the vehicle was I was teaching a computer manufacturing class, and we had real customers, a lot of real customers. So I required that the students who were in my class, in exchange for me teaching them what I was going to teach them, they had to sign a contract with me. I was the only teacher who had students sign a contract. I signed one side of the contract, and the students and their parents signed the other side. And I said I would train them and so forth, and all the things that you would expect a teacher to do. And in return, they had to do certain things, like they had to dress appropriately. And I even provided them a uniform, okay? And the uniform, well, they had their own slacks. They had to be khaki-colored slacks. I provided them an embroidered shirt. And if they wanted more than one, they could buy the second one or the third one. But I gave them the first one. And they met every other day. So they could wash their shirt, the day of class and have it dry for the next class day, which was every other day. And I required that they behave appropriately in class and outside of class. So they couldn't do crazy, reckless, careless things outside of class. And the penalty, if they did, was they would be removed from the class. If they showed up late, the door would be locked and they'd be walking around in the hall unable to get into class. And the assistant principal or the vice principal would pick them up and, he would deal with it, not me. So I expected 100% of their attention 100% of the time. They had to dress appropriately, and there was a dress code. They couldn't dye their hair pink or green or blue or some unnatural color. They had to have a belt, and their shoes had to match their belt. They had to wear khaki slacks because we were in the manufacturing operation, but we had customers walking in all the time. Well, it seemed to work. But here we have the millennials, and I'm not saying all the millennials, because I work with some wonderful millennials at the network. I mean, really great millennials. But other millennials are bringing down the opinion that many of us baby boomers have of millennials. Now, it's not like the baby boomers haven't done a lot of bad things, too. But what is it? What is it that is causing the millennials to behave in such a way that is detrimental to themselves? What is it? I don't get it. Do you have any thoughts, Rick?
Well, the Catholic Church, instigated that. It's called parochial school. And, we're uniforms. And some of the higher military academies that, were training children to go into the military would require dress code and behavior code. And you were always threatened in school that if you don't be good, we're going to send you to parochial school. That was the big threat when I was a young kid. And the nuns ran a tight ship. They had rulers that they hit you with, not big clubs, but small rulers. And I remember all of that. But basically, the casualness of interfacing has been deteriorating because of texting, flip responses, anonymity, like I'm a female on the internet and you can't tell, and I'm gang stalking someone or whatever. It is a reflection of what's happening to society across the board on many boundaries, and most of it is learned from their parents. If the father doesn't put on a clean shirt, the child isn't going to put one on. Yeah. And where do they learn these things? From their parents. And as the day moves on, things change. And it is a good thing and a bad thing. It is a right thing and a left thing. Not a bad or a right or wrong, but it's a right thing, it's a left thing. Values and what's important and why. That's important and that's not. Lying, subterfuge, misdirection, sleight of hand. All of it is fun and not fun, especially when it's done to you, not by you. And so that's where ethics and morals come in, and why you have divine comedy and divine tragedy. The idea that one swings from one to the other as a option in choices of how you want to run your good ship lollipop. I have been complaining over the years about what's been the last year or two on what's been happening to me, and I have just decided that there's not much I can do about it. So what am I going to do? Continue to fight, or am I going to continue to love? I have a choice. Turning the other cheek, got my other cheek scarred. My eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. That made me angrier, and I always wanted to escalate. Like threefold. That's what they say. You reflect someone's negativity, and it's like light beam. It reflects off you and goes back to the person that sent it threefold. I'm not trying to make a judgment on today's society, but this is no longer the country I served and protected. The administrations, plural, have no care at all for someone dedicating their life to serving their country. And when Hillary Clinton left, the thing where we came, we saw, and we conquered, and then she went like, she's crazy. She's crazy. She's not even human. And when you watched Trump make mistakes in front of the public, I mean, our president is supposed to be our most scholarly, most educated, and most morally correct. Isn't that what used to be the way it was with Harry Truman? The buck stops here, taking responsibility for the decision. I'm dismayed at what I'm seeing on a local, basic, level, neighborhood by neighborhood. I'm dismayed by it. I live in the country up on top of a mountain. I would like to know my neighbors, and yet why would I want to know that person? I don't even like them. I don't like them. I don't agree with their values. I don't want to live like that. I don't want to be a criminal constantly. Last night was the 4th of July. What are we celebrating?
Well, I've got some opinions on
I know.
what happens.
I just thought I'd put it back to you.
I object. I object to the fireworks because it scares the animals to death. It does. It does. And it's not necessary. A couple other comments when we come back. So we're talking about Independence Day, but it's not called Independence Day very much anymore. It's called the 4th of July, and people are celebrating a holiday. They have no idea what it's all about. It's a hamburger day. It's cookout day. It's hot dog day. It's get off from work day. And it's called the 4th of July in so many places. What are you doing for the 4th? What do you mean? 4th of what? Oh, 4th of July. What are you doing for the 4th? You mean Independence Day? Yeah, that's what I mean. People don't realize that why they're even celebrating, and they have fireworks, and I object to fireworks. I mean, I like plinking with a rifle on the range. I like plinking with a handgun, but what happens with fireworks is people just light them off and they don't think about what happens. Well, fireworks have a lot of aluminum in them. They have a lot of magnesium in them, and they explode. And so where are they set off? Well, people set them off in their backyards. They set them off on their farms. And then they're little pieces of these remnants of the fireworks. And then the animals eat them and get sick. Some die. And where do municipalities set them off? In cities? Well, over the water, right? Well, why? Well, it's safe over the water. Really? So the fireworks go up in the air, they explode, and little pieces come down, lands in the water. The fish eat the little piece of fireworks, get sick and die. It's stupid. It's expensive, and it's stupid. We don't need to have fireworks in order to celebrate the independence. And who are we honoring? A bunch of criminals. Okay? Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, Benjamin Franklin. They're all in the eyes of the king, they were a bunch of criminals. They were wanted. They were hunted. And they were literally criminals of their day. They were revolting with guns. Pretty serious. And we're celebrating that. And I'm not saying we shouldn't. But I'm saying that fireworks is crazy. In my opinion, absolutely crazy. And, you know, in a lot of places, you can't set off fireworks. You can have little sparklers with either wire or wooden sparklers, and that's it. And there's aluminum and magnesium in that, too. But the explosive kind, so many people get hurt. So many people don't know what they're doing. So many people don't pay attention. And people who have nothing to do with it get injured by it, including firemen. And fires get started. So that's my comment on fireworks. As far as parochial schools, I attended an all-boys Catholic high school. I had to dress with a jacket and a tie all the time, or a suit. That was the minimum dress code. You had to have it on. And it prepared me for life. It really did. And I'm wondering, you know, nobody wore sandals and flip-flops to school. Nobody. Nobody wore pajama pants to school. You would be in the principal's office, and if that didn't work, you'd be thrown out. You know, as a prank, a few of us would get together and we'd pick on one guy. And when he was in gym, we had the combination to his gym locker. You know, it took a couple weeks, but we got it. And what would we do? Well, when he was in his gym shorts and gym shirt running around, you know, doing what guys would be doing during gym, we'd take one of his socks, one of his dress socks, just one. And we'd borrow it for a couple days. And he'd come back, and he'd go to put his suit on, and he'd have one sock missing. And the teacher would say, Smith, where's your sock? I don't know. Smith, where's your belt? Smith, where's your tie? It's like, so, I mean, that was fun, but it really put this guy in, you know, in a situation which was pretty embarrassing. When he cleaned up his act, we eased off. But, you know, we were taught that you had to wear the appropriate attire for the position. And when I was in banking, in the 3 banking positions I had, I wore a jacket and a tie and a white shirt and long sleeves. You know, I did what was expected. Why would you do that? Well, because you're certainly not going to climb the ranks if you don't.
One of the requirements when one is a speaker at a conference or doing a workshop where people have come to pay money to hear you speak or to take a course from you, you always dress nicer than they did. You had to, as a part of what they're paying you for.
Yeah, hold that thought. Hold it. Doc Graham's with us, Dr. Richard Allen Miller. Rick, you've got some videos on YouTube. You sent me some links to them. I've just got them on my screen. And one of them is called Brainstorming with DocRam.com. Want to tell us about that?
Well, I have a brand new YouTube channel. Those are older YouTubes that have not made into my website yet, that were done by a very good friend of mine that died. He was my webmaster. I was very blessed to have him. And then I had a second one, a webmaster, and he died. Isn't that kind of weird that I had 2 webmasters in the last 10 years, and both of them are dead? I don't know what that means.
Okay,
I don't think there's any significance other than I was very blessed to have people. They took some old interviews I had done with John B. Wells and put them into video and to emphasize, you know, things that I might be wanting to stress in my talks. And I was supposed to be on John's show last Tuesday, and they canceled for some reason and haven't rescheduled. And I don't know quite what that means yet, because John is trying to help me. He set me up with a thing called Proton Mail. My war continues, and I choose not to allow it to affect me. And so I've got a great idea on how to generate money and end run Amazon. And that idea is for me to teach a course on tarot. And anybody that takes my first class on any of these different things I'm going to teach, and I've got 6 different categories, get a copy of the book when it comes out, I'm going to teach the book by writing it with the students right then and there. I did that with the potential of herbs as a cash crop. I had 207 students at Road Community College, and when I taught the course, I showed them how to write a grant. One of the class periods was how to write a USDA grant, and I wrote it as part of a teaching thing, and it got funded. So what I did is that 207 students then had a cooperative that after the class was over, they had a job. And at the end of 2 years, the business itself was worth $400,000. That's what got paid off when somebody took the processing plant away from me, so I couldn't control the herb trade. They went in and made an offer to all my students, and that happened. And I thought, well, Netflix has just made me an offer for a workup on a science fiction series called The Domes of Mars. And so I decided, why don't I teach that as a screenwriting class like the one I took? I'm going to teach it, and then the students each week will work together in writing a screenplay that I will submit to Netflix on the Domes of Mars, and I'll show you how to do a workup like I did for X-Files. And if it gets funded, then those 30 or 40 students are going to have a screenwriting job where they have to come up each week with a new concept, like dealing with the ghosts of Mars. The whole idea of the Domes of Mars is to take the geodesic dome program up in Ashland, my Ash of Deliverance, and make them with a 3D printer, which exists up in Bellingham. And instead, I'm going to make the greenness of Mars growing hemp and poop from the Martian as the material that makes these domes on Mars. And that's how I was going to start the series, as a way for people to see how everything works in screenwriting and living on the planet Mars.
You know, it's really fascinating that you mentioned that, because if you think about it, if we were to go to Mars today, we would have to have some kind of a structure to live in. And printing, it seems like the best way to do it. How else could you do it? Unless you're going to deliver it, all pre-assembled. So, or in stages. But then all you have, I mean, if you've got the printer, what a great idea. So,
we have the printer, by the way, up in Bellingham, and it will print a 30-foot dome in one 24-hour period with non-porous concrete.
And, okay, so for our class to understand, what is the advantage of living in a dome? What does it do for you that conventional structure does not do? For example, a stick-built house or a prefab house, the traditional above-ground houses. What does a printed dome do for you?
You want me to answer now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. So the geodesic dome will withstand winds up to 400 miles an hour, unlike a monolithic dome. And the geodesic dome is so strong as to be the structure of what diamond and carbon-60 is made from. In fact, that's what a dome is. It's a C60 structure in terms of not made from carbon, but it has the same geodesic format that Buckminster Fuller decided and is the current design used to go in to set up an emergency hospital after a flood or a hurricane of some kind that might occur. And Mars right now will probably be wind-driven for power. However, the geodesic dome will be the only structure I know that could withstand on the surface of Mars. If you put a geodesic dome in under the ground, it also would be structurally extremely strong and would be a perfect situation for vertical aquaculture. I'm dealing with a group now up in Kelowna, Canada, that are building a brand new concept in LED lighting that is cool heat. That means most of your light in light bulbs and lighting systems are lost in, maybe 90% is lost in heat, your power. And an LED is cool. They don't burn out. And the nice part is they're bandwidth specific, which means that when you're growing broccoli, it requires a different kind of bandwidth than, let's say, celery. And the bad news is there's a high likelihood we're not going to be able to farm on the surface of the earth shortly.
Yeah, it's getting really hard right now.
Well, the garbage in the air. Look at what Bayer is working with Monsanto. Now, there's a match that's made in hell. It's the worst possible combination of Nazi Germany and I don't give a darn kind of attitude that the pharmaceutical houses are currently doing. Monsanto is generally considered the worst corporation in the world, and it just formed up with Bayer. And so watch where that one goes. Our Earth is being taken over by something creepy. And I have no idea what it all means, but I can tell you that learning how to garden for yourself right now is going to probably be one of the things that saves your life.
Rick, you mentioned Monsanto, and I was thinking about this morning. What happened to the bees, the honeybees, and all the other bees? I mean, we hardly see them anymore. And is it cell towers? Is it airplane exhaust? Is it automotive exhaust? Is it diesel exhaust?
It's electromagnetic
power lines
in all forms. It's the bee will not go toward certain kinds of buildings and houses now because of the electromagnetic radiation. And it's in certain specific bandwidths that are damaging our bees. And so, of course, the military says, well, we'll just come out with a drone. They have those drones, a little fly on the wall with a camera on it, hooked up to an AI for pattern and facial recognition. And now, with the 5G towers and the smart meters, you can control everything around you, including your diet and the kinds of foods you're eating, because they're all bandwidth sensitive. It's going to be a scary world shortly in terms of what you can and can't do and why.
So, Rick, how do we live without bees? How is that possible?
We make an artificial bee, a drone.
Really? So we have a bee an artificial a robot that flies?
Like a bee. They have those now. I've got articles on those that exist. They're already deploying them for surveillance. They have a smart bullet that I posted on Facebook that it's a little tiny drone that has a camera and an explosive shape charge that's enough to just take out a brain. And the guy on TED is sitting there, throws the thing up in the air, and it hovers, and then he reaches in his pocket, and he dials in a couple things, and it goes straight to the dummy and blows it up. Now, imagine 10,000 of those being deployed over, your part of the world, with each one of them having a specific individual's name on it. Run by an AI, the thing can move 100 times faster. You can't swat it out of the air any more than you can a fly. And yet, it has a genetic code for gene-specific going after Vincent Finelli. And if it's run by an AI, that means it can, know exactly what you're going to do to hide from it 28 minutes before you do.
I was reading an article, and I don't know if it's true or not, but that China has a handheld laser weapon that can kill a person. You hold it like an AK-47, if you will, or it's battery powered, and it can kill targets about half a mile away. So this handheld thing is quiet, makes no noise, and it shoots a laser beam. It has a telescope, a rifle scope, if you will, and you just squeeze the trigger, and up to a half a mile away, it can kill. But they say it's non-lethal. You cannot see the energy beam with the naked eye, but it can pass through windows. It causes instant carbonation of human skin and tissue. It will burn through clothes in a split second. If the clothes are flammable, it will set the person on fire. The pain is beyond endurance, and it's handheld. The Chinese have one. RichardAlanMiller.com. Richard, A-L-A-N, Miller.com. Laser weapons. And, it used to be something that was of science fiction. You point and a laser would fire. Well, now it's a reality. And the Chinese have it. And it's handheld. It'll shoot about 1,000 times. You squeeze that trigger and it'll fire off a laser beam at a distance of about a half a mile. And it's a killer. It can blind you. It can kill you. The pain is unbelievable. It's absolutely quiet. No sound. You can't tell where it came from. You can't see it. All of a sudden, if you get hit with it, you're in intense pain. You can be blinded, die, hit you in the brain, whatever. Absolutely unbelievable. It's called non-lethal. Non-lethal, really? Well, the U.S. military has one of these on a ship, and it can knock a plane out of the air. So, pretty scary stuff. So what happens? Well, we start with robots, and boy, aren't these really cool? They can build automobiles on an assembly line, but then the military wants them, the police wants them, and they can deliver bombs to your door. And what else? Well, drones. Well, that's pretty cool. You can, have. We used to have these kits that you would build to, remote controlled airplanes. Wasn't that neat? And you could fly a remote control airplane. Well, and it continued development, and we have these drones, and now we have drones with cameras, and wow, that's not good enough. We need drones with lasers. We need drones with bombs. We need drones that can shoot. Wow, it's unbelievable how the government corporations have taken technology and are using it against us. It's really frightening. Absolutely frightening. Rick, you have any comments?
Well, of course, all technology has two edges to the sword. And everything is a good, bad, and ugly. Everything. The drone, instead of Mr. Mailman or the milkman, remember when milk was delivered to the door every day?
Sure.
What happened?
Yeah.
Well, that cow became incorporated. And now, the postman only rings twice. Now, with that said, a drone from, let's say, Amazon might be not really from Amazon and has a little facial recognition thing for target specific. Boom. And delivering a little package from Amazon. Oh, I've got some jewelry coming in. Kaboom. The level of terrorism possibilities is increasing so quickly that I'm going to be really surprised on how they can. You can get a jammer for these smart bullets now, but I noticed they're not available to civilians. And you have an aircraft going overhead, and it drops out 10,000 little tiny bees, each one with a different name on it, run by an AI. Where is that going to go? You can watch it on TED.
About that, right?
The guy will, you can call it Smart Bullet, TED, and there it is. And the guy throws the thing up in the audience, and the bee hangs there. He reaches in his pocket, dials in a little thing, and the bee goes right straight to the dummy and blows up. Now, that's the future of weapons. And the end game one is this voice-to-skull thing that they're now saying can be used with C60 molecules because of the terahertz frequency band that it's at. Everything has a double-edged sword to it. And, of course, the first application is going to be military. That's why their budgets are bigger than anybody else's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got a comment about that when we come back. Back in 1980, I kind of lost my temper. We were building a product that was really cool, and we couldn't take it to market. So I thought we should come up with a different product. I'll tell you what that is when we come back. Dr. Ram's with us, Dr. Richard Alan Miller. So back in the early 1980s, probably like very close to the early 1980s, early maybe 1981, we had a company that we formed. Two of USA Preparedness Instructors and I formed this company in Silicon Valley, California, and we were manufacturing satellite communications receivers. You know, those big dish antennas, that kind of equipment. And we were a pioneer. And ultimately, we came up with a really neat technology, and that would be cable television without the cable. Can you imagine? So instead of running cable everywhere, we developed a technology that would allow you to just have a set-top converter box and an antenna that you would point toward the transmitter, and you would be able to get television over the air. Cable TV over the air. And what we didn't know was just because you had really great technology, just because you had the best product in the marketplace, didn't mean you were going to make it. Didn't mean you would even be allowed to make it. Sometimes the government gets in the way. Sometimes you have to bribe government officials in order to get to the market. And we didn't do that. We did not do that. So we were unable to market our equipment, our designs, and it was really innovative. So we were sitting around in the little conference room we got to use every once in a while. We rented the loft in a large building, and when people would come, they would be really impressed because it was a nice building, and they had secretarial staff and they had salespeople, and they didn't work with us. They were there, and we just rented the loft, an unheated loft above the workers' areas, the office. So we were in an unheated loft. And if we needed to, we could use the conference room once in a while. So we're in the conference room, and we're just kind of scratching our heads saying, what are we going to do? You know, this really cool product that we wanted to sell in the marketplace, we couldn't do it. So one of my business partners said, well, radar detectors, you know, we can make them. That's not a problem. And we were talking about the different kinds of technologies for radar detectors. And, you know, how far out it would need to reach before, or so it could prepare you to slam on the brakes if you were speeding, or even if you weren't speeding, just to let you know that the police were there, you know, aiming their radar guns at you. And I said, no. Why would we do that? Why would we build a radar detector? Forget it. Let's build a radar jammer. Let's jam it. And my business partners looked at me like, you've lost your mind. And I said, okay. So it's illegal, right? Yeah, okay. It's illegal. All right, so let's build kits and sell the kits. And we won't be the ones actually finishing it. And if people bought all the parts, they could build their radar jammers. Well, we never did that either. But that was how angry I was. I was so angry that we lost this opportunity because it was a really good technology. Because we didn't understand that to play the game, you have to grease the skids. You know, having the best product doesn't mean that you're going to be able to sell it. Sometimes you have to pay people off. That's how business works. And it's disgusting. So we didn't build the radar detectors, and we didn't build the radar jammers, and we didn't build this television without cable system. So I just wanted to share that with you, Rick. And so in my latest pursuits, I've decided, and my son just said to me, why are you doing this, Dad? What's wrong with you? Well, I've decided to run again, this will be the third time, for the board of directors of the local electric cooperative. And the electric cooperative just sent me what they believe is a bio for me. And here's what they say. Now, of course, I've got to change this. It says, and this is verbatim, Mr. Finelli has taught both students and teachers in all grades through college, with his instruction featured on radio and the NBC Today Show, period. He hosts USAPrepares.com, the largest preparedness daily radio broadcast in the country, period. As an innovator, he has experience in electronics, electricity, carpentry, automotive engineering, and building construction, period. He has farmed for 29 years, with 13 years in the Cooperative Electric Service territory. Married for 39 years. That's it. So they've expanded the format, so I can now have 110 words. I can have a bio with 110 words. I have to get at least 15 signatures from members of the electric cooperative. That means customers. 15 members. Now, I can't have like a family of 5 that has, an electric meter. I've got to have 15 separate electric meter customers. And then I can be nominated by those 15 people to run for the board of directors. Now, they want to know why I want to run for the board of directors. And that's kind of easy. The electric rates are too high, and I want to encourage solar electricity generation by the members so that if the grid has a problem, we just disconnect from the grid, and we'll have some amount of electricity to be shared among those who are in the cooperative. Those are the principal reasons. It's an uphill battle. No one has ever been elected who has done it from petition. The only way that you get elected is if you are nominated by the nominating committee. The nominating committee is 2 people who the current director, of which there are 9, has selected to find someone to replace him or her. So how's that going to work? How would it work that you'd have 2 of your buddies, you say to them, hey, Tom and Harry, look, I'll tell you what, you got to find somebody to run against me. And, we're buddies, right? Okay. So find somebody to run against me, and you're the nominating committee, and pick someone. Now, do you think they're going to pick somebody with any hope of winning? The first time I ran against the nominee from the nominating committee. She was a cashier at Walmart. Now, I'm not saying that cashiers are bad people. I'm just saying that what is the likelihood that a cashier at Walmart with a high school diploma knows enough about the electric power grid, Ohm's law, and business sufficient enough to be on the board of directors to control the corporation? That's what's going on. So what happens is the membership committee, it's unwritten, but I believe their function is to find someone who can't possibly win so that the directors keep getting reelected.
What you do is you come at them from the back door. And the way I would do this is realize there's no way you're going to get inside to run the machinery. And so what you do is you come up with an alternative and have a competitive company. And the way I did that here locally is that I have just designed a solvent extraction recovery plant, critical carbon dioxide, for under $2,000. I'd use old 305 stainless from Coca-Cola vending machines. Eat me. Then you could do the same thing by taking old used bicycles and converting it into a water pump so that you could, when the grid goes down, here is your emergency backup getting your water out of the ground bicycle. $200. You can get them for less than $20. You slightly make modification on it so that it hooks to your well, and you now have a power company competing with electricity. And it's a metaphor. Now, anybody can do that, and you especially could do that. What you do is you have a little tiny welding company out in that barn I saw. It'd be a very cool little thing in there. And you go out and you collect for scrap the stainless steel that is going for scrap at old Coca-Cola vending machines. They use a 305 rather than a 316 stainless, which will still work as a critical at home sit on your kitchen table and allow you to do your own extraction at farm gate, vertical integration, so that when you choose to do an herbal pharmacy, you do it vertically so you can sell it and give it or barter it to your neighbors for heart medicine and whatever CBDs that you might want to be playing with. I have a plan on how to decentralize everything. And that's just Exhibit A. What you're trying to do is take and make people a little bit more independent. And if you want to be a little more independent, that you don't require your neighbor a just-in-time delivery system with Walmart at 3 days for food. You do your own in-house garden and have a solvent extraction plant that you can lay out on your kitchen table and pull the chemistry that you need, that you can now give to a hospital or your neighbor next door. Once you have that concept and energy in your mind's eye, the electric company is lost, ultimately, because when the grid does go down, people are not even going to be able to access their computer after a certain period or their cell phone battery.
You're absolutely right.
And
we'll be right back. And you mentioned herbal pharmacy. Let's talk about that, because that dovetails with this discussion. We'll be right back. You mentioned an herbal pharmacy and vertical integration. And so how can we make our own CBD oil? Hemp oil. How can we make our own?
Easy. You grow hemp. Special farms. There's cultivars. That's there's ones that are called train wreck, and that's real high in THCs. And then there's another one called silky rope, and that's a good one for CBDs and long chain fiber if you're going to make your own clothing, rope, or tarps. And if you want a tarp, all you have to need is a spinner and a loom. If you want to do CBDs, you're going to need some chemistry. Toluene, one of the other strippers, there's different ones. You used to get them at drugstores. Now you have to go to scientific supply houses. The one in Oregon is Van Waters and Rogers Scientific Supply. Every state has one. Portland is a real cheap one. And you can get any chemistry you want and any level you want and include such things if you're going to make, let's say you're going to make methamphetamine. Okay? If you wanted to do that, all you need is a anhydrous ammonia. And you can buy that at a gas company. But wouldn't it be nice if you could make your own anhydrous ammonia as a solvent? I'm not going to make meth. We're going to go to CBDs, which are better than opiates. And by the way, it also works on poppy if you wanted to use poppy. And if CO2, critical CO2, carbon dioxide, is a real simple one, you can make your own critical CO2, or you can buy it down the street because it's used as a refrigerant, like all kinds of other things are in your heat pump. Now, when you make these things on site, now you have a control of pricing, and now you can sell your product, not quote what the market will bear, but fair wage markup. And CBDs are now being shown to be working for all kinds of pain, including, glucosamine and chondroitin. It's a better pain reliever in terms of inflammation in the body. It stops it. The inflammation is what's going to be the big one for all of us. As we get older and older, it's inflammation. And what you want to do is not allow that to go through the body like a resonant cavity oscillator where, this bone talks to that bone and that bone married to the choke bone, and it talks itself up the line to, you're aching all over. CBD stop that nonsense. And the best ones are now being discovered that they need to be kicked off with just a little bit of THC, and you're good to go. Now, imagine what your neighbor will give you from his corn crop. I don't want to grow corn, but I like to eat some corn. But, give you from his corn crop, you give him a little bit of CBD. That's what an herbal pharmacy is about. It's going to be about delivering heart medicines, blood thinners, and other kinds of stuff from natural products rather than synthesized like, I don't know. What's the one that everybody likes? It's from... I've forgotten so much that I have not even begun to, originally, everything came from natural products, and World War II stopped that nonsense because Germany was the primary supplier of raw materials, herbs. And so you have various roots that will make muscle relaxants. And, that part, muscle relaxant for migraine up in the smooth muscle, you can use all kinds of herbs that will do that as a muscle relaxant to be distinguished differently than a CBD, which is a depressant. Now, alcohol is a depressant. Everybody knows how to make alcohol on a there's your solvent. You want to do it, that's not a very good one. It'll maybe 90%, 94%. You want to get into the purity where you just a little dabble do ya kind of thing. Then, that's a simple extraction. And
hold that thought. We'll be right back. So, Dr. Richard Allen Miller, let's say a person wants to vertically integrate. I could be that person, and let's say I want to make some CBD oil.
How about this instead, Vincent? You do what they call an incubator. That field there where you have the cattle on the right side when you come in, just that little 2-acre plot right there. And you put CBD, you put a marijuana in there, legal, right there and then you bring all the grade school kids and an exercise from different schools to come in and watch how you grow it, how you break it down into fiber and spin it, and have a small loom. And I have that project going on right here in Grants Pass by a bunch of Indians, teaching
what about the legalities?
How to do it.
What about the legalities of it? Will we be inundated by...
In the state of Oregon, it is legal to grow hemp and or medical marijuana. Now, there are restrictions in cities, but the counties, the counties tried to regulate and take control of our medical marijuana and our CBD hemp. And what happened next is the state overruled them, so they can't. And what I'm doing is instead of having 3 buyers in the state of Oregon that control that CBD, I have decided to create a small cottage industry with a couple of friends of mine that weld. And what they're going to do is supply, if you want, a $2,000 critical extraction recovery plant that'll sit on your kitchen table. Now that takes care of that regulation right out of the gate. And now you have, with, morning glory seeds, you have lysergic acid amides that are used in all kinds of research and consciousness studies and medicine. Lysergic acid amide is, one of your neurotransmitters that all hospitals use. Where do they get it? Well, they get it from Chicago, Mallinckrodt. Mallinckrodt gets their opiates from Turkey. I started a study out here with County Extension growing the scarlet poppy, which is codeine, as a bulk field crop that you go in and green shop off of Indian reservations because while it requires site visits, the Indians can do it like gambling. And you ship that in a locked container all the way up to Saskatoon, and you have it put in an ampule, set in a sealed container, brought back to the reservation, and this time it's the Yurok and the Crescent City where they have a port of export, and now you can sell it to China. And imagine we were doing that with feverfew, which is different than, what's that stinky root? Valerian root. For codeine, what's that? Valerian root does, it's a muscle relaxant. Real simple one. Well, in any case, yeah, I can look it up real quick. That is a simple thing to grow around swampy areas. If you have a swamp near you, that's, valerian is, what is that? I forgot what that is. That's, like the little blue pills that we used to take that made you mellow and go back to sleep after doing something wrong. I forget which one it is. They used it in the dolls. You don't remember. I don't remember. That is a simple
Valley of the Doll? Are you talking about Valley of the Dolls?
Valley of the Dolls, yeah. It was, I'm trying to think of the drug. It's a muscle relaxant. It's not a sedative. I can look it up. I've written about it for so many years. The thing is, there are so many of them. Aspirin is from aspen tree, aspen bark, and aspen leaf. And basically, you do the extraction with an alcohol on that, what you have is a natural buffer in it as well. There's all kinds of things. Okay. I'd like to teach a class on that. Oh, I could. Okay. If somebody wants to set up a 2-hour, once a week, I will teach herbal pharmacy online with at least 30 people registered. And at the end of the course, they'll get their name in the book I wrote doing that course called Herbal Pharmacy. Now, we can make you can start with the Boy Mechanic and the Boy Scientist. And I have a 6-volume over here, Boy Scout Manual, the 30s, that run it down, how to do that kind of stuff. Remember your ChemCraft chemistry set. Whatever happened to that basic concept of making pipe bombs? That's why the military loved me, man.
Well, you're not allowed to do that anymore. You can't make pipe bombs, but the municipalities and the cities can.
Excuse me. Yeah. I found mine 3 blocks over and gone through a barn when it blew up. I set them off in sand piles. And they were little missiles is what they were. Kind of like 4th of July, only without a guidance system. A little rocket ship. I'd take a metal piece, take a wood dowel, and put it in the top with a nail going through it so it couldn't blow out. And then I'd fold the end I put fins on the thing, and I folded the thing under. And when I lit it, it would take off like a rocket ship. Whang! Straight up. I found one about 2.5 blocks away where I went through someone's barn. I had no idea. I was 12. I didn't know what I was doing, but I certainly learned. And if I can do that at 12 years old, good gosh, man, I can't even remember, the names of drugs anymore. How old is that getting? I'm just kidding. You understand?
Rick, when I was in elementary school, we learned about thrust and we learned about jet propulsion. And literally what we did was we were given a piece of balsa wood, let's say 2 inches by 2 inches on the end and maybe 8 inches long. And we were told that we were going to hollow that out and we were going to put 2 screw eyes on it and we're going to fly this thing along a very taut piece of nylon fishing line, about 100 feet long. And what would happen is you would put a carbon dioxide cylinder. Now, these cylinders were about the size of a roll of nickels,
for cake
a roll
decorating.
of quarters.
Yeah.
And so you'd have one student at one end holding this nylon fishing end really taut, another student at the other end, and the teacher would take a hammer and like a nail punch and punch a hole in the carbon dioxide cylinder, and the gas would come rushing out, and this little rocket, if you will, would fly along the fishing line.
Yeah.
And that's how we learned about propulsion. Now,
And you learned Latin in second grade. Look what's happened to our educational system and the Millennials. They're smart, and they have no concept of practicality. Boy Scout manuals, boy mechanic, that kind of thing. Popular mechanics used to be one of my favorite things that I read when I was in sixth grade.
You know, I went to an auction, and they had like a case, I mean, a huge box of old Popular Mechanics magazines. I loved them just as you did. And I thought, you know, and that was my favorite. Popular Science was, okay, but Popular Mechanics for me was where it was at because it was
you could make
practical,
something, a project in the basement.
Practical applications of how to do really neat things. And so I would read it cover to cover, including all the advertisements, every time I got one, and I kept them. Well, I found at this auction this huge box of old Popular Mechanics magazines. And I think I got them for $2 or $2.50 or something like that. Nobody wanted them. Nobody. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe
well, that's
nobody
your basic
wanted
library in the neighborhood so that your neighbor can come over and build his own windmill. You know, a windmill can pull water out of the ground just like a bicycle can. Mm-hmm. It's using the wind or using power of some kind, like your exercise bike. We're going to do exercise, turn it into a power thing, pulling your water out of the ground. It's a very simple process. And especially if you're pulling 60 feet. If you're more than 60 feet, you know, you might need a couple of people on the bicycle pumping real fast, you know, tandem. I'm just kidding. But that's as simple as it gets. And this old technology does not have to be without its newer adjuncts onto it in terms of the efficiency of the flywheel. Running on an old Panasonic English racer, where you pump it up and then the wheel runs itself for a while because it's got good bearings on it, and that keeps the water moving without having to exercise. There's all kinds of things that you could do on your farm that cover your butt when the grid goes down. And basically you can count on that now because that's what everybody's talking about, and it always starts with imagination. It'll probably be some little kid from Pakistan, a kid. Look what I can do. You know, EMP strike. Not nuclear weapons, but it'll be someone from Pakistan or Ukraine and messing around. And it'll take the grid down. And I was just talking to someone that lives up on the New York north side. I said, what are you going to do when you don't have any water? And, oh, by the way, the Hudson River is glowing because of Indian Point. I wouldn't be near New York right now. The problem is the New Madrid fault line has a whole bunch of nuclear reactors, and we have anything happen from Yellowstone or whatever, and you're going to be in what they call underwater mostly and without control on like Fukushima, and it'll probably be a forbidden zone for humans.
Rick, you know, I've been thinking about this.
You need
we deliberately chose Missouri as a place where we thought it'd be safer than most places. But you know what? Everybody is downwind from a nuclear reactor. Because
everybody.
They're all over the
planet.
Need
to turn those switches off. That's what your power company should be doing.
Well, if I get elected...
That's what your power company should be doing immediately. We did it here in Oregon. We don't have any nuclear power plants. We just have their...
Doc Graham's with us. Rick, in 1876, Nicholas Otto was working with Gottlieb Daimler and William Maybach. And he patented the compressed charged 4-cycle engine. That would be the internal combustion engine that we have. That's the design of the internal combustion engine that we have in our automobiles.
Yeah, runs on biomass from alcohol.
Yeah. And so the question, so most of us are using gasoline mixed with about 10% ethanol alcohol in our automobiles and light trucks today. And my question is, that internal combustion engine, the principles really haven't changed since 1876. I mean, we still have intake, compression, explosion, exhaust. Intake, compression, explosion, exhaust. Over and over and over. Those 4 cycles of the 4-cycle engine. Well, we've been using gasoline as the primary fuel, or oil-based fuels from
petroleum.
Petroleum, yeah. The question is, the engines haven't changed very much in terms of, they've gotten more sophisticated. We've got computer controls, and they're more efficient, and they make more horsepower, and they're more reliable, and all those kinds of things. But the principle upon which they operate has been unchanged since 1876. And we're using fossil fuel, if you want to call it, or petroleum or crude oil from the ground as the raw material that's refined as the fuel. Gasoline and diesel and so forth. Caro. Well, are we running out of oil, Rick, in your mind?
No. There's a lot of oil everywhere. That's why Iran and Iraq and Egypt and Israel, they're war. It's all about petroleum. Now, by the way, it was Valium, and I couldn't remember it, but it's valerian, and they make Valium from it, but there's a whole bunch of local things in each state. Missouri has its own analogs to Golden Seal. Oregon, our Golden Seal is Oregon grapefruit. It's got more hydrasine than it has more berberine than hydrasine, but same thing. And each state has its own pharmacy American Indians used to use. Now, there's a concept here. I wrote a book called The Magical and Ritual Use of Herbs back 45 years ago to keep 28 herbs that grew naturally out of the Uniform Controlled Substance Act. Now, it worked because I assigned sacraments, kind of like ayahuasca is today. You had your churches, dimethyltryptamine, whatever, that used the American Indian, went with the Native American religion, which was peyote. That's a new thing. But because it was a sacrament, and it grew naturally, it was legal. And almost every single pharmacy originally came from natural plants rather than being synthesized, like Valium. Valium is now made artificially. And we have a whole bunch of different things that are like that we make synthetic rather than raw material. But each region has a raw material base that's unique to that region, habitat. That's what I'm going to be talking about next week, is habitat and regional variations on chemistry, so that you now have in different regions barter with tropical Hawaii and Arctic Alaska. Arctic Alaska and their omega-3s are unbelievable. You can get purslane out of Arizona that grows 6 to 7 inches high rather than 1 or 2 inches like in your garden. That's what our future is in
and you mentioned barter. You mentioned barter, and that's what's happening in Venezuela. People don't have any money.
That's just like the Ithaca dollar when I was in grad school.
Yeah, and Venezuela is, if you want to see what's going to happen, just look at Venezuela. People are starving. They can't get supplies. Can't get materials. The supply chain is shut down.
Everything's being controlled by the government down there. That's how we're going to go if we're not careful.
Yep. Doc Ram, thanks so much for being with us. DocRam.com, Dr. Richard Allen Miller. Thank you so much, Rick.